slime. Slime, yes, because it drips. Since it's so high up, the ancients thought that in order for it to deliver its chemical messages, it would drip down through the body. The anatomy is the gland originates in the stalk from the hypothalamus, and it extends down into this portion of the sphenoid bone that's known as the sella turcica. So it's just behind the sphenoid sinus, which gives it easy access for neurosurgeons for surgery without having to cut open the skull.
That's one of my doctors had recommended that for my son to prevent the extra secretion of the adrenal cortisol, that maybe he would need his pituitary gland.
Yeah. So what they do is they go through the nose, through the sphenoid sinus, into the sella turcica. So you come in through here's anterior, come in this way, through this bone, through the sphenoid sinus is right here. You can do surgery on the pituitary gland, microsurgery right through the nose. It's called the transsphenoidal hypophysectomy. Yeah, it's funny, nice name. Transsphenoidal hypophysectomy.
Oh, I couldn't imagine that.
If people have a problem with the pituitary gland, particularly pituitary tumors, they can operate on the pituitary gland through the nose because it's in front of the sphenoid sinus. When they operate through the sphenoid sinus, they just put a bone patch or a fat patch here, and to prevent cerebrospinal fluid from leaking and to close it off. The pituitary gland is also separated from the brain proper by a portion of one of the brain coverings known as the dura sinus, dura mater. It's like a little covering over the pituitary gland. So it keeps it outside of the brain proper, which means it's easy access. You don't have to involve the brain. Anatomically, the pituitary gland has two major lobes, the front lobe and the back lobe, the anterior and the posterior lobe. But it also has an intermediate lobe, also known as the median lobe. And these two lobes are anatomically very different. This lobe here looks like a typical endocrine gland, which has those vacuoles, produces hormones. This looks like neural tissue, like brain tissue itself. So this intermediate zone is a transition between the two and produces a slightly different hormone. So the back gland produces oxytocin and vasopressin, like the hypothalamus, which is brain tissue. The intermediate lobe produces melanocyte-stimulating hormone. And the front lobe produces most of your pituitary hormones. So it produces ACTH, TSH, LH, FSH, what else? TSH, FSH is 5. I'm missing one. Prolactin and human growth hormone. The interesting thing about this intermediate lobe is this melanocyte-stimulating hormone. Melanocytes are the cells in your skin that give you color, and so the more melanocyte-stimulating hormone you have, the more color you have in your skin. And if you look at animals that change their skin color, that part of the pituitary gland is very large. So animals that go through color changes like seasonal, like animals that change their fur to be white in the winter and so on, to get darker in the spring and summer, or chameleons have very large intermediate lobes of their pituitary gland because they can change their color, in order to protect them from predators. So it's the color producing center part of the pituitary gland, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Where must have you? Where
They have any animal that changes color has a larger intermediate lobe of the pituitary gland. So yes, we absolutely would.
Would albinos have less then?
And that's usually true. Either it's either functionally making less or anatomically smaller.
What about the disease when
Alopecia. Yeah. So alopecia, complete alopecia, not alopecia. What's that called? Alopecia. Alopecia is when you lose your hair.
Oh, right.
It's
Michael Jackson.
yeah. It's like
Vertigo.
vertigo.
Vertigo. Yeah. Is that more that you're losing the cells die, or there's?
That's usually peripheral and not central. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of us would have to come up with the right word.
I just can't pronounce it right. That's all.
Just because it sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yes, that's right.
Have a Sanskrit
That's
word for that.
pronunciation, right.
You get a prize.
So since the pituitary gland produces so many pro-hormones, it's considered the master gland. So it controls growth, blood pressure, metabolism in the thyroid gland, production of milk, conception and pregnancy, water balance. All those things are controlled by the pituitary gland.
If the posterior is more like brain tissue, what is the anterior tissue?
Looks more like standard endocrine tissue. It has cells that have those large vacuoles in it that contain, the hormones. And the posterior gland, has the vasopressin and the oxytocin. And the oxytocin is the love hormone, and all those activities increase oxytocin levels. So bonding activities increase oxytocin, which oxytocin also increases your sense of empathy. It creates this equanimous sense of empathy and feeling with someone else and feeling for their plight. So doing all these things are good, especially as clinicians, to increase our sense of empathy. So diseases of the pituitary gland, are either related to increased secretion, decreased secretion, or irregular secretion. So it's Tikshna, Manda, or Vishama pituitary secretions is basically what we see. And the increased secretion is either related to a primary problem of the pituitary gland or a primary problem of the hypothalamus telling the pituitary gland to produce too much, or loss of feedback. Like we looked at that feedback loop. So any one of those, can cause pituitary malfunction. So teasing out, which level it would be at. The perfect example is, a primary tumor in the pituitary gland that's producing prolactin will act on the breast to produce milk. So if you're examining the person and they're producing milk and you examine their thyroid, the metabolism is normal, it's not a problem of the whole gland, it's a problem of only the prolactin secreting parts of the gland. So it's probably, just an isolated problem. The person had problem retaining water, acromegaly, and producing milk, as well as, hypermetabolism, then it's the whole pituitary gland, the primary problem of the whole pituitary gland. They're not isolated to that one hormone production. So if you know all the functions, you can tease out, the abnormality a little easier. Decreased secretion of the pituitary gland, same thing, but there's one abnormality that is fairly common, and it happens mostly in women following childbirth. When their blood system is so engorged because they're carrying a child, right after birth, the blood flow to the pituitary gland increases for a short period of time to produce the oxytocin that they need to contract the uterus. And as a result, they can end up with a pituitary stroke. It's called pituitary apoplexy. And then what you'd see is all those hormones diminish. And so all those functions would go down. They wouldn't be able to produce breast milk. They'd be hypothyroid. They would develop osteoporosis. And what else? They would lose their menstrual cycle because LH and FSH would stop being produced. So pituitary apoplexy. So just be aware that does happen. The numbers are about 4% of women, and the way it's controlled is controlling blood pressure, during that stage of delivery and postpartum.
Is it just too fast a flow of blood into it?
It's higher volume.
Higher volume.
Yeah.
Will it stabilize on its own afterwards, or generally, or not?
What will stabilize?
After the stroke, is it?
It's almost always permanent. Yeah, so what women generally will come in, and you'll see them in practice, is they're taking 5 or 6 different types of hormones. They're taking estrogen, they're taking thyroid, synthroid, they're taking, an antidiuretic hormone. So because they've had pituitary apoplexy. It's interesting, study was done recently where they looked at the size of the pituitary gland and related it to emotional imbalances. And they found a very strong relationship between higher social anxiety and early puberty in people who had larger pituitary glands, but normal hormone levels. So the size of the gland somehow correlates with higher social anxiety and agoraphobia. So I'm not sure what that means, but it's just kind of an interesting anecdote. Like autistic children's brains are 11% larger than the average person. Autistic.
Well, this all makes sense.
Why does it make sense to you?
Well, I mean, just sort of functionally, the earlier you go through puberty, those hormones affect the social neural network in the brain.
Yeah.
And so, just on a functional level, if you become socially aware before everybody else, then you've got the psychological component of isolation. Because you're looking for needs to be met that other peers don't have. And you're too young to process that and figure it out. And then so you sort of set up this lifelong being out of sync kind of thing. And then, one of the main differences with autistic people is the social neural network is physically differently configured than it's, it's an anatomical difference. So
yeah, we know that from DTI studies, that they're wired completely differently.
right,
The wiring is
the
different.
wiring is different. So,
Yeah.
And the hormones affect that part of the brain.
Well, developmentally, yes, and there is a correlation between HCG production of placenta and development of neural networks, but we haven't been able to study it because we can't correlate that outside the human model, so.
Wow.
Mm.
What is it called in the placenta?
Human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG.
Oh, yeah.
They're as good as those I think
You're sharp.
I think the medical words are as good as the Sanskrit words sometimes. They're like so cool to say them. Like transsphenoidal hypoplasectomy. How many times can you say that in public, really? Okay, so that's the pituitary gland, just kind of a broad stroke, and we'll get back to that one. We'll talk a little bit more about pathology. That's a pretty blue picture of the brain, and it's highlighting the pineal gland. And the pineal gland got its name because anatomically it's shaped like a pine cone. And so it's like a little tiny pine cone. The average pineal gland is the size of a grain of rice. And so it's a very small gland. And the tissue is very analogous to the photoreceptors of the retina. So it responds to light and dark through a retinal connection. Its function, it produces the hormone melatonin. And melatonin moderates the sleep-wake cycle. It acts directly on the part of the midbrain known as the reticular activating system, the RAS. So it controls your, diurnal rhythm, your circadian rhythm. And also controls your core body temperature, which is related to your sleep-wake cycle. So darkness increases the secretion of melatonin, which creates relaxation. And decreased melatonin, or an absent pineal gland is one of the causes of precocious puberty. It throws off the circadian rhythm, so children develop puberty earlier. And precocious puberty is defined in women as going through puberty by around age 8, and in men it's age 9. That's precocious puberty. Average puberty usually starts around 12, but 8 for women and 9 for men. You have to consider it being a pineal origin. And the pineal gland has an affinity for heavy metals, and so it oftentimes is calcified if you look on X-rays, and also has an affinity for fluoride. So fluoridation, in the days where we used to put sodium fluoride in our mouths thinking it would help our teeth, which was complete nonsense, it got concentrated in pineal gland, has thrown people's sleep cycles off. And fluoride itself is very dense, and you can see that on X-rays too. It turns the pineal gland white. It gets concentrated in the pineal gland. So it's an issue. We shouldn't be chewing fluoride in our
Isn't this
food.
also somewhat, I thought I heard a report about it being related also to bipolar disorder?
Well, I don't know about that, but it might be. But if it's related to a disruption of any type of regular cycle,
Right.
I think that it certainly could be related that way. Yeah. Usually a time cycle.
So Gerard, what about the fluoride drops that they gave us for our children? Well, I have my children in the 80s, and I was given fluoride drops to give to my kids.
Yeah.
So that could have that anything to do with my 31-year-old having the adrenal cortex, excess cortisol, pituitary, all that is involved in giving them fluoride drops. I mean, my kids were born in the military, and that's what
Yeah.
they gave us, saying for whatever, they said it was good for them. And then I found out later it was not good for them, but it was too late. They're old now.
Yeah. Fluoride, it's really good not to ever take it. But
Right.
once you've taken it, you can't get rid of it. There's no way of leaching it out of your system. And so, that's a good thought.
Some of it,
Maybe-
it's
maybe
actually
affect-
kind of like what we would do for chelation therapy of using these rasaushadis that are excessive or that are same, like Gerard mentioned, affinity to metals. This is also considered kind of like in the metal group.
It acts like a metal in the body.
Yeah.
And it attaches to your bones, attaches
And they,
everything.
I
And
know
it-
when I grew up in town, when I grew up in Wellesley, they fluoridated water,
Mhm.
and probably still is.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that you put fluorine in the water is a natural antibiotic, and it kills pathogenic bacteria like chloride does. It's in the halide family, like iodine does too. Which is why if you're in the woods and you take iodine tablets with you, you can purify your water and drink it, because it kills parasites and bacteria. But the problem with fluoride is it gets deposited anywhere the calcium normally gets deposited. So it gets deposited in your bones, it gets deposited in your teeth, but it doesn't make them, tensile strength. It makes them more brittle, and it also gets deposited in soft tissue organs that concentrate calcium, like the pineal gland is one of them.
There have been some studies done on punchcarmine and diminishing heavy metals. Anything on fluoride or just?
I don't know if they've looked specifically at it, because when they do the panchakarma for detoxification of metals, it's not for any one specific metal, unless it's of a specific category of metals, like this metal is stronger in potency compared to these metals, and then they modify the panchakarma accordingly. That's the only where they would do it, say, for mercury as opposed to fluoride.
Mhm.
But in general, if you're doing panchakarma for detoxification of metals, it's supposed to be addressing all of them. Anything that is excess that's built up.
Good study, isn't it?
Yes, there are lots of great studies.
Well, I mean, since we have fluoride ubiquitous in our culture and in our children and our bodies, it might not be a bad idea to consider, looking into panchakarma, like having that
And all the
discussion.
metals that have gone into vaccinations and things like that.
And mercury in your amalgams.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
So,
That's a big one.
But the dentist still recommend fluoride. They give me, my hygienist says, you're not doing this. I said, I told you I'm not going to do that. And I
Yep.
do oil pulling instead. And I've gotten great results from that. But she says, you have to use this or you're going to continue whatever. And I said, well, I'm not going to. So that's the end of
they're
that.
using calcium fluoride now instead of sodium fluoride, and calcium fluoride is a little bit different, but it's probably still not a good idea. It's delivered slightly differently and absorbed slightly differently, but it's still fluoride. Fluoride is fluoride.
Right.
So typical, sleep-wake cycle, or diurnal system, or circadian rhythm. I just kind of included that in your slide, and it's managed by the pineal gland. Secretion of melatonin stops here.
Turn the light off just briefly.
Okay, thanks. Average melatonin, maybe 10, 11 o'clock, and then relaxation of the body, and then the melatonin stops as just before waking up. which allows you to have a bowel movement and higher alertness, in the morning. It really correlates, with an Ayurvedic clock. So I love when, science, matches the ancient wisdom. So how do we try and detox our pineal gland? And is there ways to create health? Well, I mean, the first two are getting rid of fluoride. Eating, clean foods, exercise, because since it's part of the, endocrine system, blood flow increases, its removal of toxins. Since it's photosensitive, avoiding too much blue light is a good thing. Closing the eyes in silence and, getting the brain to relax. And anything that would create positivity in your life, sattvic, experience.
What vitamins?
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that one.
Is boron something that can negate fluoride?
There's been a number of reports on boron, and I'm not really aware of, how it acts. So I'd have to do some homework
I
on
had
that one.
a doctor give me boron because I was testing very high fluoride when I first noticed.
Circulating fluoride?
Well, because I had just had a tooth work and
Oh,
loaded me with fluoride before I knew
yeah.
that I had an option not to get that. So
One interesting thing about the pineal gland is people who have significant pineal abnormalities, particularly pineal tumors, they have a symptom that's very unique to pineal, is that they can't look upward. It's called Carnot syndrome. They have paralysis of their upward gaze. They can't look up. So if you're doing an exam with them, you're looking at their eyes, if they can't look up, they oftentimes have an abnormality of the pineal gland. And that's the result of the fact that the optic radiations go right by the pineal gland. So physical presence of something there can cause, inability to look upward. Carnot syndrome.
Yeah, yesterday, this morning, you said something that the pineal gland is photosensitive. How do you explain that?
So if you dissect the pineal gland, it has the same photoreceptors as the retina. So the same tissue elements as the retina, but it's not formed with the same rods and cones. So it doesn't create image, but it has a piece of film essentially there that is sensitive to light. So it does have chemical reactions when light interacts with it. So when light
How can
interacts,
light interact with it?
because, and this is only recent, is that every chemical reaction in the body produces light. So every chemical reaction in the body produces light at the wavelength of about 440 nanometers, which is blue. And so the pineal gland reacts to chemical reactions that produce light. We didn't know that because we weren't able to measure it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's something that's like,
that's so cool.
yeah,
That's exactly what we were talking about yesterday.
I know. I was like, oh,
so, I mean, this is an interesting thing. It's,
we really are being so light.
we are, we recreate light.
And I'm gonna blow your mind
yeah.
with
More
scientific, in physics, they have proven the exact same thing.
And that's a result of temperature.
It is exothermic.
It's exothermic.
In the fact that when there's a reaction that is exhibiting
It's
heat.
giving off heat, but it's also giving off light, and it's giving off energy, and heat and light are just different.
It's
of
energetic, right?
energy.
Give a holler before you turn the lights on.
Yeah.
Whoa.
We'll turn it back off after you lose weight from the board.
Whoa.
I think that
Open up all these windows.
Well, I think I need about an hour to process.
Yeah, these concepts, why it may seem like we're going slow, it's huge.
It is.
We're sort of crossing between realms of physical and metaphysical, and looking at how it's influencing and actually creating things that we do know about. That's why this system is so mysterious, because it's something that we know is happening, but we have never looked at it in the perspective of how it's happening and why it's happening. But if we draw ourselves back out of that, what we do now, and look at the other factors, we get the bigger picture.
So
of how
the big picture is that how we're related to plants. What do plants do? They take water and carbon dioxide, use light energy to make substances that we can use for food and oxygen that we can breathe. And we always thought that we were superior to plants because we do stuff that was better than them. But we're actually identical but reverse. We take foodstuffs, and since in this case it's carbohydrate and oxygen, produce carbon dioxide and water, and we release light energy. We're never able to measure this piece because we didn't have a machine that we could put in our bodies and actually see the light energy that was coming out of our chemical reaction. So we're exactly the opposite
So now we do have that.
that we do have. Yep.
How,
Yeah, I knew all that, but I didn't know that it was light. I just thought it was
reflection, mirror image.
Right, yep, exactly.
is there,
And this is all like light.
is it quantifiable? Do they
Yeah,
they know
440
how much?
nanometers, and they can measure the volume of it. Yep. Yeah. So blue light, mostly blue light.
Well, I can go home now.
Just kidding. That's good, right?
Yeah, full now.
All right, we're moving down the endocrine system, and we're at the thyroid gland, which is this little guy here. And the thyroid is one of the largest endocrine glands in the body. It's butterfly shaped, as you can see here. And it sits right below the voice box or the Adam's apple. It is surrounded by the carotid artery where it gets its blood flow from. It's very, very vascular. It's the most vascular of all of the endocrine organs. And the two lobes are connected by the branch in the middle, which is known as the isthmus. Some people have no tissue in the isthmus. They have a little fibrous band, but most people have some tissue in the middle of the gland. The thyroid gland originates from the base of the tongue embryologically and then descends into the neck. So some people don't have a thyroid gland here. They can have a thyroid gland at the back part of their tongue. And they can have it anywhere along the front part of their neck before it descends to its adult location. And this path is known as the thyroglossal duct. And people who have cysts in the middle of their neck, oftentimes it's remnants of the thyroid gland that didn't descend all the way down. It starts at the back of the tongue embryologically in the fetus and then descends down to its adult location here. Occasionally, when you examine a patient, you might feel their neck, you'll feel thyroid tissue that's sticking up. And about 10% of people have what's known as a pointed up thyroid gland, like that's known as the pyramid lobe. It's also, a remnant of this duct coming down into the lower part of the neck. The best way to feel the thyroid gland is to put your hand on either side of the person's neck and have them swallow, and you can feel the gland move up and down. The name of thyroid comes from the Greek and it means shield. You can see from its shape, kind of looks like a shield, I guess. Loosely looks like a shield. But it's better than pituitary, which is just slime.
Wondering if between the sternocleidomastoid and the trachea, that's barely palpable, that's it.
Yes, yes. But this has to be soft touch. It's a very soft gland, unless it's abnormal. And it's better to feel it as it moves. It has a lot of muscles on it, superior, middle, and inferior. You can move it up and down. You can feel it move.
So because of its location, is it possible to be externally damaged? Like if you in the right spot or gets constricted or anything like that?
Yeah, of the seven marmor points that can kill people, that's one of them. Yes, so it can be damaged there. It produces, its main function is metabolism, and it produces two hormones, T3 and thyroxine. T3 is the more active of the two. Thyroxine is essentially T4. And the numbers after the T indicate the number of iodine molecules that are attached to the tyrosine chain. The amount of iodine necessary for the average person is about 70 micrograms a day. And those of us that live on the coast, we average about 1 to 2 milligrams a day. So our iodine intake is adequate. People who don't live near coastal areas, who aren't exposed to sea air or sea water or sea life, which is iodine abundant, can develop iodine deficiency. Then the gland enlarges in order to try and suck whatever iodine it can out of whatever food you're eating, and that's a goiter. So a goiter is just a gland that went crazy because it was iodine starved, trying to make itself bigger so it can try and pull whatever iodine it can out of any of the food stuff it has.
Will it shrink if you give it adequate iodine? Will it shrink if you give it adequate iodine?
It depends if it's chronic or acute. If it's been goiter for a long time, it probably won't. But if it's been a short-term iodine deficiency and it's been an acute goiter, it'll probably shrink. So the time frame is variable. It depends on the person. Yeah. So this is our blood system, and this is the inside of the thyroid gland. So this is a small snapshot of the wall of the thyroid follicle. And the inside of the follicle here is where the thyroid hormone is stored. And then it gets taken up and put in these vacuums and delivered to the bloodstream. So on the blood side, our dietary iodine gets pulled in through the pump, which is a sodium iodide supporter. And then in the cell, the thyroxine is deposited into the colloid where it mixes with the iodine and produces the hormone. So if you have thyroid hormone deficiency, it can either be because the iodine is not getting into the cell, it's not mixing well with the protein, or you don't have enough tyrosine, which is the base of the thyroglobulin molecule, to form the thyroid hormone. So anywhere along this chemical path, you can have an abnormality of thyroid hormone quality and production. So iodine is essential, and the tyrosine is essential, which is the backbone. And the tyrosine is made by the body. It's made by the liver, but only a small portion of it's made by the liver. It needs to get it from, dietary supplementation. It's an essential amino acid, and it's most commonly found in dairy products, in almonds, in peanuts, and in pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are very high in tyrosine, source of tyrosine. Also is in meat.
Back to the iodine, if you were like an inland dwelling native person way back when, where'd you get your iodine?
You generally didn't. And so native populations that lived in the center of our country oftentimes suffered from goiter. It was really a chronic problem, and so they didn't get their iodine, and so, but the body needs such a small amount, 70 micrograms per day, if they got it, from some grasses that had iodine supplementation in it. And looking at indigenous cultures, they often found sources for things, but they did have a high incidence of goiter.
Is there any other system that uses iodine?
In the body? No. Thyroid gland is the only organ of the body that concentrates and collects iodine. The thyroid also produces another hormone known as calcitonin, and it's a small amount. And calcitonin regulates calcium balance. The diseases of the thyroid gland, they're either anatomic or they're functional. And Anusha's going to be talking about some functional diseases of the thyroid gland, particularly hypothyroidism, which is, all of us see patients with hypothyroidism at least daily in our practices. because so many women have hypothyroidism, and its relationship to autoimmune disease is a really important topic. But the anatomic disease is goiter, as I talked about, alluded to. But the thyroid gland frequently develops cysts because these follicles can enlarge, and the cysts contain thyroid follicle colloid. And so they're always benign, but they can develop cancer. And there are 3 types of thyroid cancer, in varying degrees of severity. So you can never ignore a nodule of the thyroid because it's a cancer until proven otherwise. And if it's a cyst, you can forget about it.
Are they generally easily palpable if you do the swallow thing?
Yeah, because the gland is so soft.
Yeah.
If you feel something like a stone, it's going to be harder or rubbery. It's very easy to feel. You felt one?
Yeah, I can feel it on he ended up dying from a big cancer of the thyroid. Well, that's what we didn't too expensive to test him, but that's what me and the doctor kind of figured out because it got really aggravated. It got really big, and then there was a tumor there.
Well, 2 of the symptoms that, associated with enlargement of the thyroid and thyroid pathology are difficulty swallowing because of its location, and then paralysis of your vocal cords because the recurrent laryngeal nerve lies right next to it. So it can paralyze your vocal cord. So ways to keep your thyroid healthy are, be sure you're getting adequate sources of iodine. And us, we live here, we don't have to worry about it. People who live inland usually use iodized salt nowadays in order to balance that, or sea salt. Sea salt is a good source. Foods that, contain tyrosine and iodine are here. You want to limit things that would cause inflammation, to prevent autoimmune disease, and avoid foods, which block iodine absorption, particularly raw vegetables, block a certain amount of iodine absorption, which is why all our food should be cooked. Another good reason it blocks iodine absorption.
Sort of raw foodists tend to have low iodine, or no?
They tend to have more goiters, yes. So if we look behind the thyroid gland, this is like looking from a person's back to their front. Behind the thyroid gland are these 4 peanut-shaped organs, which are the parathyroid glands. And they're called parathyroid because they're next to the thyroid, para meaning next to. And the parathyroids are glands that are most involved with control of calcium metabolism. The hormone that they secrete is known as parathormone. Parathyroid, parathormone. No brainer, right? They're all about the size of a grain of rice. So you can't feel them unless they're really grossly enlarged. And on the backside of the thyroid glands, and the thyroid's in front of them. So parathyroid problems anatomically often go undetected for a long time because the gland has to grow very large in order for it to become pathologically apparent. So you're at stage 5 of pathogenesis by the time you're really identifying it. And how does it work? It increases calcium absorption from our diet, so it directly affects our small intestines and our colon. It allows calcium release from bones. It aids in the conversion of vitamin D and decreases calcium excretion by the kidneys. So it works to retain the calcium integrity of the body. So it increases the absorption from the diet, allows the release of calcium from the bones, converts vitamin D to its active form, and prevents excretion from the kidneys.
And that's release of calcium from bones that's supposed to happen.
It happens constantly, yes. It responds to the calcium levels in the blood, and so as the calcium levels rise, it stops the absorption of bone. As calcium levels drop, it would increase the absorption of bone. So it works on the osteoclasts, the guys that eat up the bone, and the osteoblasts, the guys that deposit bone. Opposite ways.
There's some very specific presentation on a DEXA scan that indicates parathyroid dysfunction, like it only appears in the left
Yeah.
side or something.
It's, the way parathyroid dysfunction usually appears on DEXA scan is that it's peripheral osteoporosis rather than central osteoporosis, and oftentimes left side greater than right. And why that is, I have no idea. It's just been reported. And so it's an indicator that you should look at the parathyroid, for that reason. I don't know why.
Somebody I worked with, it showed up and they removed parathyroid.
So parathyroid tumor that was over-secreting the hormone. Yeah.
But it manifests, left side.
It's left side, upper and lower long bones. So it's not the shoulder girdle or the hip.
Yeah.
It's the humerus and
Yeah.
the radius and ulna and the femur body and the tibia and fibula. Yeah. So the functional problems with the parathyroid is that diseases are either related or oftentimes recognized being related to increased or decreased function. So you have people come in with calcium abnormalities. Too much calcium, too little calcium usually indicate that they have a parathyroid hormone problem. And our poor thymus, no longer a endocrine organ, but we will talk about it because I think it's important. Actually, that's a good way to stimulate your thymus.
Yeah, I have read.
Sternal
I know
tapping.
old folks do that. We
Yeah.
tap our thyroid.
Yeah.
So I missed, how did it get degraded or deloaded? Why does it matter?
Because it's only active for only really active for a short period of people's lives. And so for most of your life, it's essentially considered vestigial, but it's still active, and it shrinks. And most people, after puberty, thymic tissue is really not even observable on any imaging that you do. But you can measure thymosin levels. So I think because anatomically it degrades, it shrinks.
What do you think?
I think it should be considered a part of the gland. In people who have, autoimmune disease and T-cell problems, you can activate and have the thymus gland, get larger. And you can see it in certain pathologies, like people with myasthenia gravis, which we'll talk about briefly. If you remove their thyroid, thymus gland improves the disease. So there's a hormonal effect there. So it's involved in pathology, and it can be involved with physiology, particularly people who have, T-cell lymphomas, and things like that. So I think it should still be included. Then I think Pluto should still be a planet.
Well, it's clearly doing something that they way more than.
Exactly, like the appendix.
Right.
So anatomically, it's in the center of the chest, just behind the sternum in the anterior mediastinum. That's the location of it. It's in front of and above the heart, adjacent to the great vessels. And in that little space there is the thymus gland, and it's intimately associated with the lymphatic system. Top of the thymus gland extends up, and this location here is the jugular foramen. It's the origin of the thoracic duct. So it's where most of the lymphatic fluid goes to draining the body. So the thymus is intimately associated with the lymphatic system, and as a result of that, it's intimately associated with our immune system. It's the site of production of most of our T killer cells. And thymosin is the hormone it produces, which develops T-cell immunity.
You said that thyrosin?
Thymosin, Thymosin, thymosin. Thymosin.
When I asked you before about the hormones going through the blood system, they also going through the lymphatic system?
No, they go through the blood system. So thymosin travels through the blood system to go back to the thymus gland to create T cells, but then it also circulates to lymph nodes all over the body to have T cells growing in those lymph nodes. So these lymph nodes have rich blood supplies around them. The hormone does not travel along there, lymph travels in there.
So the thymosin is going through the blood system, but it's working in the lymphatic
The
system.
target organs are the lymphatics, the lymph nodes. So back in the 50s, babies who died from sudden infant death syndrome, when they did autopsies on these babies, the thymus glands were large because they were babies. And so they thought that thymus gland was the origin of SIDS. And so many children from 1951 to almost 1963 were treated with radiation to the thorax to shrink the thymus gland. So those people are now adults, and we'll see them in our practices that they've had chest radiation for thymus gland, shrinkage. It was a syndrome that was called status thymolymphaticus. And, kids who died from SIDS, felt that the thymus was somehow related, to the loss of their respiration, either anatomically or, functionally. So there's a whole host of people. And when you're doing your intakes, people who may have problems with their thyroids, or problems with their immune system, part of the inquiry might be, were you ever had radiation treatment to your thorax? And not only people with lymphomas, but people with this bizarre syndrome, children were irradiated. And Boston Children's Hospital is one of the places they did it. Not anymore, but they did it for almost a decade. Just a little thing at OGIS, one of the seats of OGIS in my mind is, since OGIS is our immunity, and our, final essence and development of our doctors, somehow there must be a correlation between OGIS and the lymph system, and particularly the thymus gland, which makes me want to say, yes, keep the thymus gland as an endocrine organ. So when we want to keep our OGIS, is do things that get rid of decreasing it and do things that increase it.
Did you mean to put hot water up there and smooth it down?
No, it's backwards.
Okay.
Backwards. Thank you. Oh. No, I got that. That's backwards.
Okay.
We'll get rid of that slide. We'll move on to the pancreas.
Glad you know your-
Before you move on to the marma over the thymus,
Fluid marma?
any,
It's an essential marma.
marma. If you think there's anything to stimulating the thymus by stimulating marma?
Oh, I absolutely do. I mean, I think it's interconnected. I think energetically it's interconnected with that system. It's the heart chakra, and so it's the Frid Marma. And, at the onset of the AIDS epidemic, one of the things they tried to do with people who were developing AIDS early on was stimulate the thymus gland by doing chest tapping and by doing massaging with essential oils. And it's hard to tease out if those people did better or not, but groups of them did better, but they also were in close communities with a lot of support, and they were getting this kind of loving, care rather than getting, all medical stuff. So did it help? Probably did, but did other things help too that kind of went with it? Yeah, probably too. So it's hard to figure out, but they had sternal tapping as well as massage with essential oil on the marma. Okay. The pancreas is one of the endocrine organs that's also an exocrine organ. It produces peptides that come out and act on, aharasa to digest. But it also has these clusters of endocrine cells scattered in the body of the pancreas that are known as the islets of Langerhans. So those are the endocrine portion of the pancreas. 95% of the pancreas is exocrine. 5% of the total volume of the gland does endocrine work. And it's about 6 inches long. It's nestled deep in the center of the upper abdomen, behind the stomach and in front of the spine. And it crosses the spine. So a portion of the pancreas is on the right side of the upper abdomen, and the tail of the pancreas goes across the left side of the abdomen and tucks into the hilus of the spleen. It kind of goes across the abdomen, nestled by the sweep of the first part of the small intestine and the tail goes up into the corner, center of the screen. The hormones it produces is insulin and glucagon. And insulin is the primary hormone for absorption and metabolism and control of glucose. And Anusha is going to be talking about diseases of that from AHA and and diseases around diabetes. Two forms from an anatomic perspective of diabetes type 1 and diabetes type 2, are physiologically very similar, but the etiological basis is different. Primary diabetes or diabetes type 1 is usually failure of the pancreas to produce adequate amounts of insulin from these islets of Langerhans. And that's oftentimes, familially related or related to primary diseases of the pancreas, either infection or toxins. And the primary infection of the pancreas, which we don't see much of today, is mumps. And I don't know if any of you had mumps, but people oftentimes when they had mumps, they had mump pancreatitis, which is a severe form of mumps. And you can end up with pancreatic failure as a result of that. And the major toxin for the pancreas is alcohol. And end-stage alcoholism, those patients oftentimes have diabetes, and it's functionally identical to diabetes type 1 because they lost function of the insulin-producing portion of the pancreas and pancreatic failure. Diabetes type 2 is pancreas does produce insulin, but peripheral function of insulin on the cells is blunted. And so that's oftentimes related to obesity and age, primarily obesity.
So the exocrine ones are just the things that go into the digestive system?
Yep. And they travel through ducts. This is a Schrottbus. This is a duct. And they have these acini, which are enzyme-producing cells that's created for these ducts, collects and then deposited into the small intestine. The blood supply then, the major pancreatic, blood supply picks up the hormone from the islets of Langerhans and goes to the blood by the vascular system, just like any endocrine gland. The two laboratory tests that they use nowadays that you might want to know about in common knowledge, and you'll see on patients' charts, for the assessment of diabetes and insulin use, is hemoglobin A1C. And hemoglobin A1C is a measure of the amount of glucose that's stuck to the hemoglobin molecule. And it's basically a 90-day percentage average of how much hemoglobin is stuck to the molecule. Your endocrinologists use this number all the time. And the normal is less than 5.6%. And the other number that you'll see that they'll use all the time is a measure of fructosamine, which is a measure of sugar that's circulating in the cell that's been converted into fructose, fructosamine. And that's a short-term measure of, how the blood sugar has been maintained in terms of quality. That's usually about a 1 to 2 week average, and the normal value is less than 200 micromoles per liter. So hemoglobin A1C is less than 5.6%, and the fructosamine is less than 200 micromoles per liter. Just in case you come across that on people's charts or in consultation with some colleagues, they'll say, working with this patient for their obesity, and their diabetes, and their hemoglobin A1C is 6.1. Okay, that's high.
So it's interesting to see that over the years, you'd see commercials for certain drugs, and all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe it's the last 3 or 5 years that you start hearing this A1C. I never heard heard of it prior to the commercials. So is it actual the name of the hemoglobin? It's
Now, the hemoglobin molecule, the test is called hemoglobin A1C because that's how it's measured. But what it's measuring is the amount of glycosylation of the hemoglobin molecule. So the hemoglobin molecule, the surface of it is getting stuck with sugar. And that's one of the problems in diabetes, is the surface of the blood cells are getting stuck with these sugar molecules. And they measure the percent of hemoglobin molecules that have sugar stuck on them using that test.
So that's fairly new.
Probably within the last 5 or 10 years, they've been using it as a marker for long-term management of blood glucose. So when you measure your blood glucose, that's telling you what your blood glucose is now. When you look at your fructosamine, that tells you what your average management of your blood glucose has been over the last 2 weeks. When you look at hemoglobin A1C, that tells you how your long-term management has been of your glucose over 90 days. So it's a 90-day measure, the longer term, intermediate term, and short term.
Do you do it every day, like over 90 days, or is it just one test?
It's just one test, and it tells you that's how that your average has been over the last 90 days.
What's the short term test?
Fructosamine.
Oh,
That's intermediate. Short term is glucose.
short term glucose.
So you go for a lab test and they take your blood. Let's see, your glucose is 110, your fructosamine is 190, and your hemoglobin A1C is 5.4. So that tells you that your spot glucose, what it is now, is pretty good. Your fructosamine, your glucose has been well controlled over the last 2 weeks, having any spikes, and over the last 90 days, you've been managing your insulin and glucose well. So you can have any combination there. Your spot glucose could be 280, but your other two parameters may be okay. So today you're messed up. So today your glucose may be normal, but your hemoglobin A1C may be 8.3. That says, well, over the last 90 days, you haven't been doing such a good job. Like, let's talk about, what's your diet been like? Have you been taking your medication? Are you active?
That test that where they make you drink like sugar stuff. How is
Glucose tolerance test just tests the body's reaction to, a large dose of glucose. So it looks at the insulin response. And they're doing that really pretty much for people who have really poor insulin control and for pregnancy.
Yeah.
For gestational diabetes, which is different. Are you going to talk about that?
Like,
Okay. So that is the diabetes talk I wanted to talk about. So a way to keep the pancreas healthy, from our perspective, is avoiding things that are toxic to the pancreas primarily. So really, avoiding alcohol in large volumes and being sure you don't get infected. But doing all these things that increase the blood flow to the pancreas are good ideas. And then, they're showing downward facing dog here. Anything that allows for flexion at the abdomen level, because think where the pancreas is, it's right here, is going to increase blood flow. Anything that's going to, pranayama that increases blood flow to the abdomen is going to increase blood flow to the pancreas. Adisara, Kapalabhati, Bhastrika are all good for pancreatic health and splanchnic blood flow. Yep. Anything that's going to work at this level. So as you're thinking about what can we do to increase pancreatic health, particularly if you're working with an endocrinologist and you have a patient whose insulin is not well controlled, bring the yoga and pranayama piece into it. Really helpful. So talked about that. Lucia's going to talk about that. And, the herbs that are been used to control blood sugar are Gemina sylvestre, which is, a sugar scavenger, essentially, and cinnamon and chromium. And, John Douillard has a preparation which he calls Sugar Blaster HP, and it's a combination of these three things. And it actually is very effective in managing blood sugar, taken in combination with regular drugs. Are you going to talk about Not
I
really.
think so, which one is, I'm looking for the transcript. They might have come through it.
Oh,
I feel like it was
No, it's not on the list. You can go ahead and talk.
no, not really.
No. Okay.
I just did an advertisement for livespot.com, that's all.
I think it's called, Saptasada. I believe.
I don't know the Sanskrit name. Do you know it, Hillary?
I do it.
Mesha Shringi.
What?
Mesha Shringi. Yeah, it's there.
I must know a Hindi version.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Himalaya has it. This Himalaya.
Okay.
Mesha Shringi.
So I'm on to the last two of the endocrine system glands, the adrenal glands. And adrenals get their names by being near the kidneys, near adjacent to renal kidneys. And they're also known as the suprarenal glands, the glands that are above the kidneys, because anatomically they are, we'll put the picture in. They sit right on top of the kidney, like a little cap, like a little yarmulke on top of the kidney. Kidney yarmulke, the adrenal glands. And anatomically, they have two very different structures. They have an outer cortex and an inner medulla. The outer cortex produces the glucocorticoids, and the mineralocorticoids and the androgens. And the inner cortex produces norepinephrine and epinephrine, or adrenaline. So this is closer related to the sympathetic nervous system in terms of its activity. And this is, endocrinologically related to the hypothalamus pituitary axis.
I'm sorry, can you which produces which again?
Yep, I'm going to write it for you then.
Do you call it the renal or the adrenal gland?
This gland is the adrenal gland, but it gets its name from the fact that it's near the kidneys. So it's called above the kidney or adrenal. Renal is the, one of the Latin names for kidney. That's how it gets its name. Thanks. So the adrenal gland is kind of a triangular shaped gland, and it has the medulla and the cortex. And the cortex is divided into three zones. Okay, the medulla produces epinephrine and norepinephrine, or adrenaline and noradrenaline is, analogous to that. And the cortex produces glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids, and androgens. And each of these three zones produce each of these different ones. So glucocorticoids produced in one, mineralocorticoids and androgens are produced in the three layers of the adrenal gland. Okay. And these each have names. This is the glomerulosa, reticularis, fasciculata. So, I don't even know those, but those given these Latin names for whatever reason. But there are three zones. Each one of those are specific for making each one of those hormones. It's kind of an interesting gland, like surrounding, it's like a jelly donut with the jelly on the inside of it, the medulla being the neurological-like tissue that produces sympathetic type of hormones. And it's innervated from the lower thoracic spine, from T5 to T11. So the sympathetic nervous system actually connects with the central part of the adrenal gland. So the glucocorticoids that are made in the adrenal gland, most common one is cortisol. And we'll talk about that when we talk about deficiencies of the adrenal gland. And cortisol's function is metabolism, and immunological mediation, so immunological suppression primarily. The mineralocorticoids that are produced, the primary one is aldosterone. And that Datu's chart I showed you, starting with the liver, going all the way down to the adrenal gland, aldosterone is the final product. It's like the OGS of that Datu system. And that controls electrolyte balance and blood pressure. And the androgens that are produced primarily is DHEA, which is the precursor to both estrogen and testosterone. So it's like the common ancestor.
Two testosterone hormones.
And estrogen. So the ovaries then attract the DHEA and convert them into their respective organs. Too much production of cortisol by the adrenal gland results in Cushing's syndrome, which is a disease we'll talk about in the next hour. And too little production of the mineralocorticoids in the adrenal glands is Addison's disease. So it's hyperfunctioning of the cortical function or diminished cortical function. What was the excess? Excess is Cushing's, and diminished is Addison's. And a number of famous people have suffered with Addison's disease, primarily John Kennedy, former president. And this busy slide just goes to show you, each of the locations of the cortex, and the final, outcomes of each of them. The interesting thing is that all of the hormones that are produced in the adrenal glands come from the same precursor. And the precursor for every hormone that comes out of the adrenal gland is cholesterol. So those of us who, are observing our patients who are on either really restricted cholesterol diets or taking medications that are reducing the body's cholesterol levels, it affects the production of our essential hormones by not having enough cholesterol. So there's an absolute amount of cholesterol that our body needs in order to function. Having zero cholesterol is not an important goal. Cardiologists will say as low as you can go is really important. Really is not. Balance is all that's important here. So the take home of this is that cholesterol is the common etiology of all the hormones that are produced by the adrenal. So what things stress the adrenal gland? Pretty much everything. They respond to physical stress and emotional stress exactly the same way. So perceived stress, will affect the adrenal glands and the outpouring of cortisol. So foods, infections, smoking, exercise, gut irritators, fear, lack of relaxation, certain drugs will affect the glands in a negative way. So the gonads are the last organs in the endocrine system I want to talk about, and we'll start with the ovaries, which are the endocrinological organs in women, and they maintain the female reproductive system. They're about the average ovary is about the size of a large grape before menopause. So it averages, about 3 centimeters long by 2 centimeters wide. It enlarges during pregnancy to some degree, but the average size is about the size of a large grape. It can enlarge to significant sizes in syndromes like PCOS, which Anush is going to talk about, polycystic ovary syndrome, which is an endocrinological disease that Ayurveda can have a significant impact with. And it functions to convert and produce estrogen, and the 3 estrogenic analogs it produces that are active are estradiol, estriol, and estrone. And those produce secondary sex characteristics in women. Development of breasts, development of a female shape, menses, And fat deposition at a different distribution than men. Primarily, lower body fat deposition is what estrogens do. It also produces progesterone. Progesterone is, a hormone, enhances endometrial preparation for the acceptance of a fertilized ovum. It also initiates the sloughing of the lining of the uterus during menses. It decreases the mother's immune response at the initiation of pregnancy. Progesterone levels go really high once a fertilized ovum is implanted in the uterus. So it essentially lowers the mother's immunological surveillance so you don't attack the fetus. So it shuts off your immune system temporarily, and progesterone does that. And it relaxes the uterus so the uterus does not contract to eliminate the fetus. So towards the end of pregnancy, as progesterone starts to drop and oxytocin starts to increase, the uterus starts to contract and you end up with labor. It also inhibits lactation. Two other hormones that the ovaries produce that are less known is one is inhibin. Inhibin inhibits the feedback loop to the pituitary gland that shuts off the FSH, which goes to the ovary that tells it to start to develop a follicle so you can produce an egg. So FSH comes to the ovary and tells it to start producing egg, which now will be extruded and picked up by the fallopian tube. And it enhances, it doesn't enhance. And the other one is activin. Activin is a hormone which enhances the FSH secretions from the pituitary gland. The final one is a hormone that's known as relaxin, which was recently discovered. What that does is it prepares the woman's pelvis for delivery. What it does is it relaxes the fibrocartilage in the pubic symphysis so it can spread, and it relaxes the pelvic muscles and makes them more pliable. Relaxin. Relaxin. Everybody wants a little relaxin. A little shot of relaxin today. That's what I'm getting, like a little too Tomasic. Too much of my relaxing level. The ovaries anatomically are connected to the uterus by the uterine-ovarian ligament. They sit in the broad ligament, and they're intimately associated with this end of the fallopian tube. It's known as the fimbriated end. It looks like little fingers. And as the ovum is extruded from the ovary, it kind of floats into the fallopian tube and then travels to uterus. Fertilization usually takes place somewhere in the fallopian tube. That's why it's the most common location of ectopic pregnancies. And then implantation will take place in the uterus, usually. Testes, the male analog of the ovary, is about the same, a little bit bigger than the ovary, size of a walnut approximately, and it maintains the health of the male reproductive system. And it's located, outside the body in the scrotum because it functions better at temperatures below 97 degrees in order to produce sperm. When you raise the temperature of the testis above 97 degrees, spermatogenesis decreases. So in men who don't have appropriate migration of the testes into the scrotum, if they have their testes like somewhere in the inguinal ligament undescended, they end up being infertile. So temperature is really important, for spermatogenesis. And the function of the testes is to produce sperm and testosterone, which is the secondary sex characteristic that creates secondary sex characteristics for males. Body shape, muscularity, body hair, facial hair, changing of the voice and the shape of the Adam's apple, height. It also controls male libido. It's very popular nowadays to treat, decreased libido, with exogenous testosterone, despite the potential downsides of that, rather than using other things which can enhance, testosterone, like therapeutic touch and abhyanga.
How does testosterone interact with brain function? I know someone who has Klinefelter syndrome and wasn't diagnosed till he was in his 20s and had learning disabilities, anxiety, depression, and now that he's getting testosterone treatment, all of that.
Testosterone in the male acts to develop in the brain up to age 25. So, it enhances the neuronal synapses and connections. It also works to prune ones that aren't useful. So if you don't have enough testosterone, you may have too many non-useful synaptic interactions. Like when a baby is born, you have approximately 200 billion neuronal synaptic connections. And by age 10, you have about 100 billion. So we prune away about 100 billion connections, ones that cause, malfunction or are not useful. So people with Klinefelters who have not enough testosterone, one of the things they have is they still have that analog of too many interneuronal connections causing, misfiring. So it's regression and progression. So it's creating balance in the brain. All right. So that's all I wanted to say about tests. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the adrenals. So I don't know if you want to keep going, and I have, for my second part, I was going to do 3 cases. Or do you want to take a break? Take a little break? Okay. Let's take a break. Okay. Tiny teeny pee break? Tiny teeny tea break.
No, totally. We keep each other happy and smiling.
Taking about a 15-minute break.